The great urban philosopher Young Jeezy once said, "My president is black, my Lambo's blue, and I'll be goddamned if my rims ain't too." Well, Mr. Jeezy, now the president is white. We got to talk about it. Step into my office. So, I don't know how to break this to you, and I will be as delicate as I possibly can, but the president is white. The president of the United States is white. I know you're thinking, duh, of course he is. Well, here's what I mean by that. I don't mean demographically, he's a white man, although he is one. I mean, Donald Trump sees himself as the president for a white America first and everyone else second. And just to be clear, that doesn't even include all white Americans. If you are a white American who is a liberal, if you are a white American who is a moderate or a never Trumper, hell, if you are a white American who's a conservative, but you dare to criticize him, he doesn't really give a shit about you either. But deep down, his core mission, he sees himself, he sees America as a white nation, and he is the leader of that nation. How do I know this? Right? Why do I make this claim that Donald Trump cares about white America first and everyone else second? I think we have a lot of evidence going back even before he got into politics, but I'll just I'll just speak about last week. There were a number of things that happened last week that I think give or lend credence to the notion that the president is white. So let's get more specific. Let's put some meat on the bone. There's a guy named Marco Elez. Right? Marco Elez was outed last week by the Wall Street Journal as being a racist. He had a Twitter account which he thought was anonymous, which spewed racist bile. This Twitter account, it said that we should normalize Indian hate. It said that just 3 months ago. It said that he was racist or I was racist before it was cool. So he's acknowledging his own bigotry and I think accurately stating that in this cultural moment, in certain circles, being a racist has some kind of cachet. It could be a career booster in the right circumstance. He also dabbled in eugenics. Again, an out and proud racist. And the reason he's important is because he works for Elon Musk at Doge, not at Tesla, not at SpaceX, but at Doge. Not a real department, but certainly doing real damage as we speak. Also, he's 25. So the Wall Street Journal outed him last week. Okay, that they connected Marco Elez to this account and he abruptly resigned. This is typically how these things go. You get caught in a scandal of some sort, in this case, racism. You resign. You don't want to bring shame on the administration. And that's that. Well, a miracle happened because the very next day, after resigning, after being outed as a racist, Marco Elez had a resurrection. Elon brought him back. Okay. He put a poll to his X account to see if he should bring Marco Elez back. And this is after we knew why he resigned. And like clockwork, almost 80% of the folks who responded to that poll said, yes, bring back the bigot, bring back the racist. None other than our current vice president chimed in. JD Vance chimed in. And I want to be clear about this, so I'm going to quote him. This is what he said. Here's my view. I obviously disagree with some of Elez's posts. I wonder which ones. But I don't think stupid social media activity should ruin a kid's life. Stop right there. Stop right there. A kid, he's a kid now. A 25-year-old man is a kid. That's your first indication. Right? That's your first indication that, we're not on the level here. He's a kid just doing immature things on social media, but also he's mature enough, he's skilled enough, he's qualified enough, he's mature enough to have access to the country's most sensitive data, to the Treasury Department, to the Department of Education, et cetera, et cetera. But I digress. Back to Vance. We shouldn't reward journalists who try to destroy people ever. So I say bring him back. If he's a bad dude or a terrible member of the team, fire him for that. That's the end of the quote. Now this is interesting. A bad guy, a bad dude. I was under the impression that being an out and proud racist was somewhat of an indicator that you might just be a bad dude. I was of the impression that if you view your fellow man, your fellow Americans even, as less than you because of their skin color, that you might just be a bad dude. I was under the impression that being a racist in 2025, an open racist, was an indictment on your character. But apparently that's not the case, at least not according to our current vice president. And that's just one example. There's more. There's a more. Um, Racist number two, Darren Beatty. Darren Beatty, who is now our Undersecretary for Public Diplomacy and Public Affairs, eh, he is another racist. And unlike Marco Velez, Darren Beatty stood 10 toes down. He did his racism under his own name out in the public. Again, I want to give you a good sense of what I mean. I'm not just calling these men racist because they told an impolitic joke or I'm not being a sensitive snowflake. Here's what he said, quote, competent white men must be in charge if you want things to work. Unfortunately, our entire national ideology is predicated on coddling the feelings of women and minorities and demoralizing competent white men. End quote. You see? You see? Competent white men. Okay? In order for the country to function properly, it needs to be run by competent white men, not competent people, not even competent men. He couldn't stop at the misogyny. Right? Competent white men. And as one of those racial minorities, I'm shocked to learn that our national ideology is predicated on my feelings. It just it's not trickling down, as they say, right? But anyways, that's not it. Darren Beatty was fired. Darren Beatty was fired in 2018 by the Trump administration. He was a part of the executive branch and he spoke at a white nationalist conference and he got fired. The Trump administration, Trump 1.0, had the good sense to fire him because of racism. But Trump 2.0 had they have no qualms about him being one of our faces of public diplomacy, right? He said more. He said he had a tweet where he suggested that African Americans should be sterilized. And if we resisted, just offer us some Jordans. Now, I'm not one to complain about Jordans, obviously. However, the notion that African Americans should be sterilized, should be dealt with through, should be offered Jordans to force their sterilization is not only racist, it's immoral, it's insulting, it's dehumanizing. And this man is a part of our State Department, an open bigot. Not the only one. Oh, hello, Mr. Les. An open bigot is a part of our State Department. Right? How do you justify this? Talking to you, Donald. Right? Donald supporters, MAGA. Are you okay with this? Are you okay with these bigots being a part of the Trump administration, making decisions that's going to affect the lives of so many people here and abroad? Not done yet. Another story. Late last week, last Friday, Donald Trump signed an executive order. Now, let me give you some context for this executive order. Some of this context you are already aware of, right? Uh, you know, if there's anything consistent about Donald Trump, aside from his narcissism, is that he has a hard line stance on immigration, on refugees. And I know. MAGA likes to claim that it's just about the border, it's just about people who are here illegally. That's not true. Ask Vivek Ramaswamy about immigration that's legal. H-1B visas are legal, and MAGA resisted that ferociously. Right? Um, One of the first things that Donald Trump did was to suspend our refugee resettlement program. Okay? He suspended TPS status for Haitian immigrants, for Cuban immigrants, for Venezuelan immigrants, people that are here legally. Right? And in the case of Cubans and Venezuelans, their American counterparts are overwhelmingly MAGA. They vote conservative. And many of the folks who are here under TPS are now have to go home. They are in serious danger of deportation. And the logic is that, I feel bad for them, but we have to focus on America first. We have to make sure that Americans are good first before we take care of you. And for a lot of people, that is music to their ears. They love to hear the president talking that way. Right? He gets it. He's going to focus on his people first, right? A powerful America first sentiment. Well, this executive order last week allows for refugees to come here, to resettle here. We're going to identify them. We're going to pay for their travel and that of their families and bring them here. And we're going to fund it with the American taxpayer dollar. The refugees in questions are the ethnic minorities of South Africa. If you didn't know, the ethnic minorities of South Africa are white. They're white. South Africa is a majority black country. The president of South Africa is black. And Donald Trump claims that the majority in South Africa, the president in South Africa, are being cruel and hostile towards the ethnic minority. They're suspending programs that are meant to help the ethnic minority do well in education, in business, in the economy. They're taking their farmland, right? So it's in the best interest of those ethnic minorities to come here, and we're going to pay for it. Now, make that make sense. We are kicking out people who are already here, who are refugees, folks who are here legally. We're not talking about folks who snuck across the border, folks who are here legally, Haitian immigrants, Venezuelan immigrants, Cuban immigrants under TPS status. You have to go home because we can't afford it right now. We have to focus on Americans. But you, white South Africans, you can come here. We'll pay for you. We have space for you. We have money for you. Like, you can't rationalize it. Now, to be clear, if South African immigrants, if the ethnic minorities, the white South Africans are being mistreated by their majority black government, then we should make space for them here. Any refugee that's been mistreated for any reason, by the government, by others, for their identity, for their religion, we should help them. That's our role as the superpower. So I'm not against them coming here, but I question the wisdom or the logic or to flat out why is it okay for them to come here while we're kicking out black and brown immigrants who are already here? No space for you, but a lot of space for you. Make it make sense, MAGA. Okay? Make it make sense. You can't rationalize that. You just can't rationalize that. And lastly, um, we had the Super Bowl last Sunday, and it was a shit game. It was a really bad game. I have another video coming up soon about the halftime performance and the MAGA response to it. Um, but before the game even took place, the NFL made a decision to remove the slogan "End Racism" from the end zone. That slogan has been a part of NFL end zones for some time now, since 2020, with the death of George Floyd, the murder of George Floyd, and the subsequent protests slash riots, et cetera, et cetera. Right? They announced this year, the first Super Bowl in the second Trump administration, that slogan is not going to be there anymore, and they announced it on the same day that Trump announced that he was going to attend the Super Bowl. Now, I'm not making the claim. I have no evidence that they did so to appease Trump or that he made them do that. Right? What I do know that Trump has contributed to, in many ways, spearheaded a climate where diversity is a dirty word, where anti-racism is bad, where DEI is criminal even. Okay? It's okay to be a racist and still work for him. It's okay to traffic in eugenics. It's okay to be a proud bigot. It's okay to imply that blacks should be sterilized and offered Jordans for compensation. That's no indictment on your character. But end racism apparently is divisive. It is something that makes people uncomfortable. We now live in a society where end racism or anti-racism is worse than racism. Being openly anti-racist is bad. Being openly racist, oh, you're just a kid. You're just a 25-year-old kid who's doing stupid stuff on social media. That's our current environment, and Donald Trump is directly responsible for it. There's a white is apropos. There's a right wing website called Gab. It's very, very right wing. It has some of the most virulent racism in the country. And the owner of that website recently said that we now live in a society where I'm paraphrasing here. We now live in a society where you can be openly racist and not get fired. That's what we voted for. Right? Something of that nature. He's partially right. Okay? We now live in a society where people get held accountable all the time. I saw people getting in trouble for trying to mimic Elon Musk and Roman Salute and cost them their jobs, their position. So you can still get punished for being openly racist in 2025. Where this CEO, this company got right, however, is that we now have a president, a white American president, where you can be openly racist and still find a home in his administration, where you don't have to worry about being fired from his administration if you're openly racist. That's no evidence that you might just be a bad dude, according to JD Vance. Okay. The president is white. So I don't know where we go from here. I don't know if or when this will affect policy. We'll see what laws actually come from this. But it can no longer be denied that this president has uh, a particular perspective that centers whiteness, particularly whiteness that agrees with him over everything else. I've long argued with people on my side of the aisle, with other Democrats and liberals, about the notion that all Trump voters are racist. I've always argued against that. I will still argue against that. It's too simplistic. It's too reductionist, right? I personally know people who are diehard Trump supporters who are not racist. They're good people. Um, but at this point, if you still support him, if you support his administration, if you're still MAGA, then you own the racism. You may not be a racist yourself. You may not like the racism. You may think that the tax cuts or the abortion policies are worth it. Fine. That's your prerogative. But it can no longer be denied what he stands for. If you still support MAGA at this point, then you own the racism. You think it's okay. You think it's worth it for other things. That cannot be denied. Okay. So, you know, I don't know what this means going forward. I'm not going to pretend that I do. What I will say, though, is we have to be honest about what this moment means. We have to be honest about what we're up against. This could get ugly. I hope it doesn't. But, you know, until then, deuces.